Hi, this is Ken. And over my shoulder there is that Bambi deer. This mama got hit by a car while she was giving birth, and I pulled her the rest of the way out of mama and tried to save her life and breathe into her. As you can tell, I wasn't successful. Although it is a kind of unique mount because it's literally on the day that deer was being born. I like to talk to people about something that I think is pretty important. It's about desalination factories being floating, anchored to the center with dome lids, having graded walkways that go around them, and that being circular in nature. The waves that splash up on them on the ocean go down through pinwheel generators to generate the electricity needed for desalination of electromagnetic type of desalination, which is the best desalination known to mankind. It makes water as clean as it was millions of years ago. Also, underneath the platforms, there can be pinwheel generators that collect the ebb and flow of the tides, that generate rip current or what have you, and use that to also power the desalination and the pumping of the water. That water can be pumped thousands of miles inland to desert land. There's one energy plant known to mankind that's basically the best solar energy known to mankind. Let's put it this way, man can't make a solar panel as good as this plant is. It's known to grow very well in the desert, providing it has good water. That particular plant is comparative to the cane sugar plant, for instance. It's 90% more bulk than the cane sugar plant. The cane sugar plant, of course, is not environmentally friendly because of where it is grown, because of the chemicals that are used to grow it, and that they're thought to help exasperate red tide and what have you. Whether they do that or not, I don't know. I'm just saying that's what people think about it. So basically the runoff of the cane sugar plant is not environmentally friendly. The cane sugar plant, which is an energy production plant, which is a cash crop, can only produce 10% of the amount of bulk of the plant that I'm referring to. Now, when I mention the plant that I'm referring to, some people are going to get turned off. Let me say up front, this plant can be bioengineered to produce huge seed oil without producing the THC, which is used to create the seed. So in other words, it can be bioengineered to produce no THC, which is a psychotropic drug that goes with the hemp plant, or what some people would call marijuana. They know it grows well in the desert with good water. But I got this all in a dream. The desalination factories, I talked to the guy on the desalination factory. He was explaining to me how they use electromagnetic energy to separate and I later found out in a post that that's true. They're doing the same process in Dubai. I followed the signs that say underground line, because the desalinated water went up to the center of the dome to a swivel that was on like a huge fireman's hose that was detachable. So in other words, the desalination factories could be moved out of harm's way. They could be taken to plants to be repaired, shipyards or what have you. They could be moved from place to place at different growing seasons for different purposes and what have you. And they are definitely the answer to our breadbasket of America, the big aquifer that was tapped into in 1948 that they now know is even more than 80% depleted. They said 80% depleted 10 years ago. So it's probably more than that now. Basically, that's going to dry up eventually. So we need to get on the program of creating clean water to be distributed inland for growth of food. This is an American problem. It needs to be an American fix. but it's an international solution to many international problems, and let me go into that. First of all, the desalination water can be used with in-ground desert homes with a conduction cooling system that's on a thermostat and a valve of the pre-irrigated water. So as those lines of water go along the way, there could be homes on each side of it that are in-ground homes that are cooled by pre-irrigated water. Now, where the beauty of this concept is the fact that because it's a 90% better bulk producing cash crop energy plant than any other plant there is, and the seed can be transported worldwide without any detrimental effect to the environment, which is to say, instead of it being crude oil in a tanker, it could be seed in the tanker. If there was an accident with an iceberg like they had years ago, then basically it just spills seed into the ocean that the fish can eat and become healthier. The real beauty of this situation is, my dad was a geologist, and he said that, and the geologists know this, the scientists know this, that old growth forest burns continuously over hundreds of thousands of years of evolution. What that means is carbon dioxide, which is not what's brought up out of the ground with crude oil. That's carbon monoxide, which is poisonous. It has a lot of heavy metals and other toxins in it, and that's why it's not very good for the environment, period. Even if carbon was not an issue, it's still an issue when you think of our atmospheric bubble just being a big bag, and the more mufflers that go into it, the worse off we are. Whereas carbon dioxide is a natural element in the world. Everything is either converted from dioxide to oxygen or from oxygen back to dioxide. We breathe in oxygen and we breathe out dioxide. So as we overpopulate or get more populated, what we're doing is we're changing the spectrum of dioxide to oxygen. Old growth forests did that as well. When they burned, they produced a lot of dioxide, but at the same time, those old growth forests would convert that dioxide to oxygen. That happens through the photosynthesis process. And so basically anything green produces oxygen. It takes in more dioxide than it does. In other words, it takes in dioxide and produces oxygen. And I believe that the best bulk producing plant probably converts dioxide. This is something that needs to be tested, but I believe it probably converts dioxide to oxygen better than any plant known to man. But more importantly than that would be having big swaths of our desert green, which would help compensate the old growth forest. The old growth forest or deforestation has more to do with the problem of carbon than what most people consider the problem of carbon to be today, which is clean energy. Let me explain that. If the whole world was deforested before the Americas were even a glimmer in the Pilgrim's eye, then probably deforestation has a lot more to do with what's going on with the conversion of dioxide to carbon than what most people would consider it to be. I'd like to quote Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein said, "Raise new questions, explore new possibilities, and regard old problems from a new perspective." And that's what I believe this concept does. It regards an old problem from a different perspective. What if we were able to make all of the deserts of the world green? What if the green of that desert was the best dioxide to oxygen conversion plant available to man? What if we had carbines that could de-seed that plant so that it could be transported anywhere in the world safely? If there's an accident with a truck or a train, Birds eat the seed, become healthier. If there's an accident in the ocean, fish eat it. It breaks down, turns into something that the microorganisms can eat, which is the bottom of the food chain of the ocean. So what we're looking at is trying to convert everything more to a more natural status so that we can get back into the natural groove of things, what God created, basically. And the reason I think this is so important more than anything else is that 300 million tons of plastic are dumped in our oceans every year. Every single bit of that plastic could be made by an environmentally friendly plastic made from the hemp oil. Now what that means is that our recycling centers could have big fans that blow the plastic up in the air. That plastic could actually be fed to animals as fodder. The carbines that dump the seed into one truck could be dumping the foliage of the plant into another truck while baling up the stalk of the plant. The stalk of the plant fiber can be used for building materials, it can be used for clothing, it can be burned in coal-type burning facilities for electricity. And at the same time, those coal-type burning facilities capture the hydrogen gas produced by the burning of the plant for compressed gas, thereby solving the age-old problem of how to produce hydrogen gas when it takes X amount of energy to produce X amount of energy. What you're doing is you're using the best solar panel known to mankind, which is the hemp plant grown in the desert, for that energy. Now, I know this all sounds a little outlandish, a little crazy, maybe, but believe me, if the studies are done, you're going to find out. One, you study how well monoxide converts to oxygen with regular plants. You're going to find out that it probably doesn't. Just like you don't like to breathe it because it's poisonous, the plants probably don't like to convert it. Then you could study how well the dioxide consuming plant, the hemp plant, converts that dioxide to oxygen. I think you're going to be very surprised at the results of those studies. I know this because I can ace a Mensa test, and if the arrows point to the X, I always seem to get it. It probably produces more oxygen than any other plant known to mankind. At least any other cash crop energy plant. The other beauty of it is the seed can be transported throughout the world safely, and then it can be extracted and used the same way that crude oil is used today. So every other use of crude oil that there is can be used by the seed. And instead of them running people out of Syria so that they can frack the land and destroy the land and the water, this would be a way for the Syrian people to be able to go home, which is what the Syrian people want. They want to be able to go back to their homeland. This is something that, if it was done properly, the desalination factories sending the clean water inland to desert farms that are growing the hemp plant for oil, then they're basically in the same environment they were. They have in-ground homes that are cooled by conduction cooling systems. They have desert land that's flourishing green. It's going to compensate the destruction of the old growth forests of deforestation. Instead